Happiness, part 12. Let me just finish up the transition and niche. Some of the things that one could take back and that would be very helpful would be persistence. If you've learned that by sticking to whatever goal you have and putting out a little more effort and not being distracted, that things can work out better than you would have guessed. If you can take that psychological trait with you, if you developed it and didn't have it earlier, then that would be valuable. Persistence and ability to withstand stress may have a strong biological component. But it's possible that one could have learned, even without a strong biological momentum in that direction, to have learned this strategy of persistence. You could have learned to listen to people. Just simple act of listening. You can, first of all, people will like you, and second of all, you can develop deeper relationships, and you can learn a lot. So, in human relations, if you've learned the strategy of listening to people, being curious, being the psychologist, the actual psychologist that human beings are born to be, because we are all natural psychologists. We have an ability to acquire understanding of our species, an ability to some extent to read each other's minds, which other species don't have. If you've learned that you tend to become dependent in relationships, and you've learned not to let yourself fall into this if tempted, this is something that one could take back. It would be below the level of consciousness, that you would become a little bit alarmed if you found yourself being sucked into a relationship because you wanted to be taken care of. And you would know that that's not a winning way to live life. Someone might take back an appreciation for maintaining health. And if, I only know about males, but I know if, a male, and I imagine this would go for heterosexuals and homosexuals, if you're willing to invest in developing your body, that is, doing things that would create a muscular, lean, and durable body, that would be healthy and would also attract whichever sex you're trying to attract. And it's extremely simple. I mean, there's nothing to it. You just have to want to. And you would acquire a suspicion of social norms. For some reason, I grew up in a town of about 50,000 people, basically working class, a prosperous place, but with no rich people. It was not classless, but it was a lot closer than most parts of America ever come to. The prevailing norms will lead you astray, as people found out. So it depends on the norm. But just doing the thing that feels easiest because people around you are rewarding you. People will say, well, I got married and had a child because people expected it of me. But that's bullshit. What they mean is it felt good, to please people, or it got a lot of attention by doing these things, when in fact many of them learned that long term it was no good. Now, I never considered growing up that I would ever get married. Never. Whatever norms existed, apparently, it was not something. I guess my parents expected that I would probably get married, but this was not anything that was ever talked about. I never expected to have children. Why the hell would I want to have children? And going through life, what I remember is I saw my father, who is totally unlike me. Here's this energetic, persistent, goal-oriented person who, constantly going after things and had been successful just because he stuck to stuff when he was younger. And because while not having close friends, he was still a sociable person. It was easy for him. And I was totally different. But I saw how much fun he had in his work. And an uncle that I was close to, an uncle by marriage, who was not a happy person, but I could see how much he got into his work. I mean, he quit a job as a chemical engineer because he felt like he was being discriminated against because he had too many ideas and he was too innovative, and he worked at Texaco. So he went into the grocery business and succeeded, but it was not, he was successful and he worked hard, but it was not fun. He loved being an engineer, and so I could see people doing things that just turned them on, and they really got into it, and it was expressed what was in them. So a creative engineer, well, there are creative engineers. A creative doctor, well, there are creative doctors. And while I was never interested in anything of that sort, apparently, I'm a natural in psychology and economics, and things that have to do with magnitudes, with numbers, and not really much of anything else. That's what I took away. And this is something that when you acquire it is beneath the surface. Last thing has to do with there's a trait. I devised a test which I published, which measures something called easy comparison. And it's the ability of people, the test purports to measure, by people answering this pencil and paper test, whether you have a trait that makes it easy for you to judge yourself favorably without being unrealistic. That is, you don't absolutely have to be first in everything. If you're second, second seems fine. If you were first, that would seem better. But the idea of not looking back and saying, if only, or what if, or why couldn't I be that good, or why weren't things different? The ability to judge oneself easily, that is, not being hard on oneself, while being realistic, turns out to be an adaptive trait. The end.